This old guy DIY video has to do with the $100 floating photography hide challenge. So a buddy of mine was showing me these floating hides that people in photography use for taking pictures of water birds. I told him I think I can make one for him for $100 and it'll be safe. I understand his camera is worth more than my truck. So I'm going to start out with this $44 piece of foam board from Home Depot. This stuff has enough buoyancy for about 240 pounds. 1 cubic foot of closed cell foam like this will support about 60 pounds. This comes out to about 4 cubic feet of flotation. So 4 times 60 gives you 240. He only weighs about 150. His camera gear is 14 pounds, we determined. And should give him all kinds of room. He intends to just walk around behind it with waders. But if for some reason he loses his footing and has to use this thing to support him, it won't cause his camera gear to go in the drink. So this is what I'm starting with. As I do some freelance engineering and put this plan together, I'll keep you posted. Now this 4x8 sheet was scored by the factory, so it made for nice breaking for me. I ended up with 2 16-inch wide pieces and 2 8-inch pieces, and I'll cut the 16s down to 8. But to break this stuff, I just came over here and I have a little wooden bench next to this shed. So I just stuck the board in like that, bent it, and then snapped it. And I effectively used that little area between the bench and the building as a press brake, and it snapped nice and cleanly. I found a fillet knife, works nicely to cut this product, and I'm going to use this 8-inch piece as a guide while I cut the 16-inch piece beneath it. And here I just have an edge where the concrete and the grass come together. So I'm going to kneel on the side with the concrete and hold the product down, and then I'll just cut with the fillet knife, and I should get a nice clean cut. And when I'm cutting this stuff, I set the knife nearly vertical, and then I cut right along the edge. I draw the knife back towards me. I'm cutting about halfway through the material, and then I'll snap it. The next step in my great plan is to cut these things down to 48 inches. So I take the tape measure, I measure 48 on one side, and I come over here and measure 48, and then I lay my tri-square across between the 2 marks. And the reason I don't just put it up to the edge and score it is that the edge is not perfectly broken, so at least this way I should get a square end. Now I need to cut all 3 of these pieces into 48-inch pieces. So when I conceived this great plan in my head, I expected to be using foam board that was 1.5 inches thick, so I would have needed the whole board. In this case, by using 4 pieces, I have an 8x8 inch pontoon effectively. So that left me with 4 pieces of extra material. But these are the pontoons that I will be working on here shortly, and we'll see what I can turn it into. So I'm building a prototype here. My buddy says if I'm successful with a $100 solution to carefully carrying $10,000 or $20,000 worth of camera gear 8 inches off the water, then photographers will be singing my name and naming their children after me all over the world. Now I'm going to use this Speed Grip construction adhesive from Menards. Cost about $2 for the tube. I'm going to cut the bands off these pontoons and glue the pieces of foam board together and then go from there. Now the product comes out kind of like toothpaste. I want it to provide some compression as the stuff dries. So you see what I did here, a couple of tool bags and some leftover granite chunks. It says it's ready to go, ready to paint in 10 minutes, but I'm going to leave it sit like this for about 4 hours before I mess with it. As the freelance engineering continues, I've taken some 3/4 inch PVC and I cut 2 pieces to 24 inches and 2 pieces to 7 inches, and now I'm going to glue them together with some 90-degree angles to make my little section that will go across the middle to actually support the camera. So these are the pieces I just assembled for the cross members. Starts out with a 10-inch piece here on the end, then the vertical is 7 inches, 24 inches across the center, another 7-inch vertical, and a 10-inch piece. Now I'll lay these out on top of the pontoons just to show you how it's going to look. So those PVC pieces are going to form the structure that the camera sits on. I'll figure out some way to attach them over here and over there. I think this is all for tonight. Freelance engineering takes time. I cut a piece of 6-inch pine down to 22 inches long to fit between these cross members, and then to mount it I just laid it on the pontoons so the PVC was off the ground on both sides. I just kind of eyeballed it to see where it looked good. Now this is going to be the structure that the camera can actually sit on. This is what it looks like as it's taking shape. That's the platform. I'll put a 3/8 inch bolt in there that he can mount the camera or the gimbal to. And tomorrow I'll determine how I want to mount these things to the pontoons. We should have a prototype ready to try. As I continue this learning by doing series, I took the 8x8 pontoon that I had built. I used that construction adhesive to tie these things together, and then just for the sake of my prototype I cut some 1/2-inch plywood 8 inches wide, and then I zip tied that to my little bale of foam here, and it'll give me an easy surface to screw into to build a little structure that allows him to take that pedestal mount for the camera on and off easily for transport in the vehicle. I just finished working on the prototype, so I thought I'd show you what I ended up doing. I started with that 4x8 sheet of 2-inch pink Owens Corning foam board, and I cut that into 4 pieces that were 8 inches wide, so I have a block here that's 8x8. And then for the sake of ease for this prototype, I cut a couple pieces of 1/2-inch plywood 8 inches wide, and I just put one on each side of that sandwich, and then put heavy black zip ties rated for 150 pounds tensile strength around it in 3 positions. And then since this camera has a lens on it that's 16 inches long, I came back 16 inches to the middle of this area where I have a 3/8 inch bolt mounted through from the back, and this one is just a little tensioner nut. When he mounts his gimbal or his camera on here, if he needs to take up some space and tighten it up, that's what this one is for. Then I made it 24 inches between the pontoons, and earlier in the video I showed you how I was taking that PVC with 3/4 inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe and made this center section. It's modular, so you have the left pontoon, the right pontoon, and then this middle bridge section is just held on with 4 1/4 inch bolts that came through beneath this piece of 3/4 inch plywood that I cut to 8x8. And I just put this one on there for ease of assembly for my prototype. I drilled the holes through from the top, so I went 1/4 inch, and then I pulled the screws out of here. I stuck a carriage bolt up from the bottom, so I have studs that are left sitting here that the PVC can go onto. So right now I just have the regular nuts. I'll go to Amazon and order some of those little nuts that have handles on them. But for my prototype, all you do is take these 4 things off, take the washers off, and then for transport, that center section comes out. I haven't worked on the blind portion yet. The buoyancy on this thing is good for about 240 pounds. You have 4 cubic feet of closed cell foam, and whether or not I'll leave the wood on there is yet to be determined. I just wanted something easy to handle abrasion as it goes in and out of the lake for the first few times, and then also to have a surface to screw into here as I was trying to decide what I was going to do next. But I'm well under my $100 goal. I just removed the nuts and washers so you can see what I made here. This block just has the carriage bolts coming through it, and then this PVC center section is removable to easily transfer to the car, truck, whatever. But when you drop it on here and put the nuts on, it's locked in, it's nice and tight, and certainly there's no concern for his 14 pounds of camera gear. it's worth more than my truck. When I was building this prototype, I did label left and right, and since this thing isn't all squared and true and perfect, you can see this isn't perfect here with the PVC, so there's only one way that this thing will fit together. But by labeling it, it's easier to know and set it up that way when you get to the water, rather than having to do things twice.